All right. As my Neapolitan ice cream from a previous episode, I really wanted to make a full video talking about Steven Erceg and what's next for him. Because I, like a lot of people, were really on the train. Still am. I still see hope for him. And I think it's a shining example of the spectrum of where the talent can enter in the UFC. Because sometimes some people burst onto the scene, like Justin Gaethje going against a top five like Michael Johnson at the time, and just showing that these high caliber fighters come from different organizations. And some people, who are great fighters don't get their shot at the UFC. Sometimes it's about pushing marketability. So once you understand these things, that it's not always about the best fighting the best like it's always marketed. Even though for the most part, you're seeing high level talent, but we've seen different variations of this. Like, Ben Askren, if he was younger and went into the UFC, we might have been seeing a different story. But since he came in a little older and his style never really evolving, he paid for it, especially when he shot for the takedown against Jorge Masvidal. And you could even see in the Robbie Lawler fight that there were cracks in his game. And I think he got lucky with that Robbie Lawler fight, things like that. CM Punk gets in marketability and stuff like that. But like Justin Gaethje comes in, gets a good fight in, and then, loses to top talent, but then understands he's got to make adjustments. And then it's around this time where I could compare Justin Gaethje to Steven Erceg a little bit, even though Steven Erceg has way cleaner technique. He's finally caught a few speed bumps. Lost the title by a round, and he was supposed to have his big bounce back fight this weekend, and gets clipped by a very high caliber striker in Kai France. Obviously, he's got some really good grappling, and he himself could knock some people out. But he feels like he needs to take on a little bit lower of rankings just to kind of season himself. Because, 5 or 6 fights in the UFC deep? That's not a whole lot to be fighting in the top 10. Some people stay in the non-ranks and keep seasoning themselves repeatedly. Look at Bo Nickel right now. If you see him right now, I feel like he could take on bigger competition than he is, but he's taking his time. He's honing his skills. So I feel like that way, when he breaks into the ranking numbers, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with, And I feel like Erceg's an example of where they start pushing someone who shows a lot of promise very fast. It just kind of seems like you see if Conor McGregor's featherweight career, right? At featherweight we're talking about, he skipped over quite a few of the fighters, and I'm not saying that he would have lost to any of them, but it's a big what-if factor. Where Steven Erceg, since he got to skip the line over guys like Kai France and Brandon Royval, right? Brendan Morano are also guys that are up there that are going to be gatekeeping the flyweight. And now that I look at it, flyweight's going to have a lot more talent in it than a lot of people are starting to realize. And maybe Steven Erceg is bringing the marketability up in a bit of a fashion that we just didn't see. But he's got a lot of guys in this top 10 era that he hasn't faced yet. And maybe Pantoja was just the right style for him to look really good. It all takes the right style to make fights, and everyone could be undefeated until they get caught. We're even seeing it with the main event with Adesanya. A lot of people were wondering how are they going to solve this puzzle that's Adesanya, who's this counter striker, even though, his counter striking was very simple: leg kick, jab, circle out, move back. And honestly, sometimes I do that when I'm playing UFC 5. It's just a very effective technique, avoiding letting the guy gas out a little bit and then throwing a few shots of your own so you have a power advantage. Now, I know that this is real life that we're talking about, not a video game, but you understand. With Erceg, he's got a few things that he's got to learn, and maybe this striking hole is just another knot that he needs to tie up. But it's just easy for us to get caught up in what he was doing well. Everything that he was doing right seemed awesome. It just kind of seemed like he didn't have anything to work on because he was just this unassuming guy who came from the shadows, 4 fights in the UFC, already fighting for a title. Impressive, still impressive. But, you know, sometimes we could push these guys a little too fast when it comes to UFC hype. And I'm not saying that Steve Erceg, I'm not saying it's over for him, not by a long shot. But we got to slow down how we're pushing him as fans. Because I get it. One title fight where we see a ton of grit, where we see a ton of potential, could get us to get that dopamine rush that has us up here, and we're in Steve Erceg mania, and then a Kai Kara France punch comes and brings us back down to ground floor where we're not feeling those endorphins anymore. But, there's other fights that are there for Steve Erceg. Can he take on Brennan Royval next? I mean, that would be a good fight because they have similar reach. And Brennan Royval doesn't have quite the power that Kai Kara France does. So I wouldn't be so worried. It's a different style of striking, I feel. But I also feel like Steve Erceg should probably go down, maybe fight someone like Manel Cape or someone like that who could strike, but also, is beatable for a guy of Steve Erceg's caliber. Just get a couple more confidence-boosting fights and then make another title run, because going up against Kai Kara France right off of a loss when you haven't fought Brendan Moreno, you haven't fought Brennan Royval, who else is in the flyweights currently? I would say, even Davidson Figueiredo, I know he's at bantamweight, but that would have been an interesting matchup to see if Steven Erceg versus Davidson, if Davidson stayed at flyweight. That would be an interesting thing, because you never know how that's going to go. Because once you're in there with the top guys, and they're all coming with different shapes, sizes, and a true champion, though, does have to learn how to manage all of those styles. And I feel like Steven Erceg is dialed up in the game enough. He's young enough. He's like 29 years old, so he's got some time. And he's got to get back on there, and he's got to really fine-tune his game now. And I think he's gotten a taste of how bad it could get. But I feel like this might be a blessing in disguise, and he's still probably got like one more shot to make things really work for him. So, give him a bounce-back fight. I honestly feel someone like Manel Cape would be really good. But other than that, I don't think he's ready for another top fiver for at least until next year. But we'll have to see where he goes, because this guy does bring eyes to the flyweight division. He's very likable. He just seems like a guy that you wouldn't expect to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but he is. And he kind of shows appearances can be deceiving. And yeah, we're all kind of still riding off of that title shot, but it's just going to take time and a little bit more dialed in. And who knows, maybe he might be able to run it back against Kai Kara France in the future. But I think we've just been shown another edge of the spectrum of when people of high talent come in and shoot up the rankings really fast. I'm eating my words with this, but it's one of those things where it's like, we'll see. And I actually had a feeling this was going to happen because we haven't seen him fight too many of the big names. And we're going to have to see him fight more of the big names before he gets anywhere close. But, peace.